Welcome to Bridging Chicago, a podcast that aims to connect our listeners to Chicago's business, community, cultural, and charity leaders. Brought to you by SATC Solutions L3C. You can connect with us on Instagram or Twitter, where our handle is @BridgingChicago. For more information, including our email, visit us online at satcsolutions.com. Be sure to rate and subscribe to Bridging Chicago on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this podcast. Bridging Chicago.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast. We're really happy to be joined today by Dr. AJ Acierno, who is the CEO of Decision One Dental Partners. And Dr. Acierno, I know everyone loves hearing about the dentists, and so I'm sure that we just got tons of people who can't wait to hear this episode because I'm sure you just get people who love to hear about you putting in your hands in their mouth, huh?
Yeah, it's always that moment that somebody says, "Oh, you're a dentist," and they give you that kind of that look. It's never a look of, "Oh my gosh, you're a dentist? That's awesome."
Yeah. Well, hey, I work at a law firm, so I get it. We've heard all the jokes. We know all the stories. We know the terrible lawyer that you had to work with or, was against you or whatever. So I'm right there with you. But we're really excited because as I got to learn more about you and about Decision One, that you really start to see what separates this practice from other practices maybe and from experiences that people have had in the past. And you start to see why what you're doing is really important and what you're focusing on is really important. And so we'll get to that here in a bit, but I want to get started with sharing about you and about where you're from, because I know our listeners love to hear about these journeys that our leaders have been on. And so if you could share with us where you're from, and if you're not from Chicago, how did you end up coming here to Chicago?
Born and raised on the Chicago Northwest side suburbs. My mom was a Catholic school teacher. My dad was a CPA, and I went to Notre Dame High School in Niles. Went from there to Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, and spent undergrad and dental school out there. And I followed in my brother's footsteps, who went there for undergrad and dental school also. And when I got out of there, my brother took the job. When your mom's a school teacher and your dad's a CPA, there's no dental jobs that you could take over, right? So you usually go and take over the dentist that you saw when you were a kid. But my brother went and got an associateship at there, so I was really left out in the open. So I went and worked for a real large corporation in Peoria, Illinois, and was there for about 2.5 years, and then came back to Chicago, met my wife, and decided, I want to come back home. So Chicago's always got a place in my heart. And, I've traveled all over the country. I've met a lot of dentists all over the country, and I'll tell you, we have a pretty special city.
Yeah, I'm actually from the Bloomington Normal area, so I know Peoria pretty well. It's a very different city, even than Chicago, but even than like where I grew up. It's kind of one of those in-between cities, and so it's interesting you got to spend some time there. Having two parents who aren't dentists, was it your brother that really you were just really following after him and wanted to do what he did, or how did you get interested in dentistry?
Great question. So my brother, since he was 3 years old, wanted to be a dentist. I mean, he craved being a dentist from early on. I actually went to Creighton thinking I wanted to be a physician, got into osteoporosis research, did 4 years of osteoporosis research, and it wasn't until my senior year of undergrad that I figured out medicine was definitely not the direction that I wanted to go into. I always looked at medicine and healthcare as you tell somebody they need something, they get it done, and they get better. Okay. And I just saw so many political hurdles and insurance hurdles and all these things to getting people to really good health. I did not like the way that healthcare was going in medicine. So I got out of that, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. And my brother said, "Hey, if that's really what you want to do, you should go into dentistry." And I'm like, man, kind of like what you said, I don't want to put my hands in people's mouths. But I actually, jumped in with a leap of faith and it was probably the best decision I made.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who are actually in residency right now and it's interesting because I mean, nothing really, very few things are what you think they are when you go into it, right? Like it's hard to tell when you pick your major in school if you're going to like it, if it's going to be what you thought it was, if you're going to get to do the things that you were hoping that you were going to get to do. And medicine seems to be one of those things where there's this external factor, as you were talking about, the political climate, the fact that, you know, the presidency changes every 4 to 8 years. So you're constantly getting new policies put out there. You're constantly getting new sort of people taking over who it's like they want to do things this way or that way. And so there's this like external factor that you can't really do anything about that seems to really affect the industry. Can you share a little bit about why that's so, maybe why that's so difficult for people who want to help people who want to improve medicine, but find it really difficult to do that because of other things?
Yeah, I have a TED talk that is healthcare has lost its soul, and my whole entire aspect during that, and it's still the way I feel today, and so on and so forth. You know, healthcare is healthcare. Doesn't belong in politics. Doesn't belong in a political football. It doesn't belong in insurance companies' hands, and it sure as heck doesn't belong. Your health of your body shouldn't be made by decisions beside somebody that has an MD after their name. And the reality is that that's not what's happening. You know, I'm all for, as a business that I'm in, I'm all for business people helping with the business aspect of medicine and those type of things. But once it starts to affect the care of an individual, then we have an issue. And honestly, that's my goal today in dentistry. My goal in dentistry is I never want to walk away from my field going, man, that was awesome. My field is actually worse than it was when I started. And I don't know too many physicians that can say our healthcare system is better than it was, right? I mean, honestly, if you don't walk into a hospital and you're your own advocate, you got an issue. The other aspect is that and this has nothing to do with the healthcare providers, but the environment that they're in. They're in an environment where, you know, they're dealing with low margins because insurances are decreasing price. The last person that I probably want to make feel like they're not getting paid enough is the person that's cutting me open or treating me and my health. But that's what's happening, right? The margins become slimmer. There has to be profit in organizations. All of a sudden, there's different things that are going on, and you just lose your soul of what you're really there for. You have a human on the end of you, and you're trying to treat that human, you know? And that's really where I think we've kind of lost it, but I know we can gain it back. We're trying to do that in dentistry, even though insurances are trying to dictate what we do. We're trying to do that. It's a little bit easier for us in dentistry because the cost factors aren't where medicine's at. But I do believe that medicine is going to make a turn for the better at some point, because we just cannot continue down this path.
Yeah. We'll certainly link your TED Talk along with this episode because I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that. And it's obvious that you're really focused on the individual and on that person's well-being. And I think while you want to believe that about every medical professional, we've all had experiences where we felt like, you know, maybe we weren't the most important aspect of treatment. And there were, you know, those other things that you were talking about. And so when you find those people who really are focused on you and your treatment and your health and your well-being, I think it's really important. When you were a young dentist and you were just starting off, can you tell me about what that was like for you in terms of, did you feel good about, you know, going to work every day? Did you feel like you were helping people? Did you feel like you were connecting with people when you were young? Not that you're not young now, but
Yes, and you know that's kind of a funny story because I have an associate in my practice now, and it was always, you know, you always think you're younger in your head. And I remember the days when I was like, I want to see the young dentist, and that was me. Right now, they're like, hey, I want to see the young dentist. You know, it's not me anymore. my partner is awesome. Dr. Smith is terrific. But I will say this. Yes, when I first got into the field and today I feel the same way. Dentistry is a relationship-based business. It's a customer service industry, right? And that's really how healthcare should be ran, is a customer service industry. The problem in medicine is that you got an income of people coming in, you got a flow of people no matter what, right?
Right.
In dentistry, it's way different. Like we're there to provide a great patient experience because we don't have a flow coming in. If, believe it or not, only 44% of this nation actually goes to the dentist. So,
Wow.
and when you start thinking that way and you start to think of the amount of people that don't go to the dentist, that's really where our focus needs to be put on, right? But we always cannot forget that it starts with a relationship. We're in a very tight situation. We have our hands in somebody's mouth. Usually, it's probably not the most fun aspect to be at a dentist, right, as you were alluding to. But that shouldn't deter somebody from actually getting to health, oral health care, and the overall body. We're seeing a lot of links to that and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to get at is that taking care of people, it's a great profession to be able to form that relationship, because I always wanted to practice where anybody can come in there. It doesn't matter whether it's the CEO of a company or whether it's somebody that is maybe doesn't have a job right now and is just searching and needing some help. That's the type of care. And then I want all their family and friends to come in, and that's what we've established. We've been able to establish that type of momentum. Now it's tough. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's tough to have a high level of customer service. We don't get it wrong. We don't get it right all the time. But it is a passion that we have.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think a lot of people have learned a lot more about in this world that we're living in and in the context of, COVID-19 is the importance of preventative care, of taking care of your body before you get sick or before something happens. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the sickness that we saw, we see how, respiratory care and preventative care really plays an important part in why people are getting so sick, if they do catch COVID. And I think it's one of those things where there's a good portion of people who can't see a doctor unless something's wrong, unless they go to the emergency room or they absolutely have to, because they just don't have those resources. And so can you share with us about like the difficulty in that of getting people resourced to be able to see the doctor or the dentist, and then why preventative care is so important in keeping people healthy and keeping the nation well?
Yeah, this is the overall big screaming thing that we're on a platform, and we could probably do a whole podcast on this, right? But preventative care is the key to anything. Okay, so you have somebody that comes in, and unfortunately, let's say they couldn't afford to come to the dentist, which that's a misnomer. Believe me, people can afford to go to the dentist. Okay. It is not medicine. It's not as inexpensive as someone would actually think. So getting into preventative care, you can do that. But usually those individuals that aren't going to seek dental care are also the individuals that aren't doing the best home care either. So when they do come to the dentist, all of a sudden it's, hey, you got to have 4 teeth pulled and you got this huge, massive bill because you have all these problems, right? So teaching them when they're young and moving that through is really important. We do a super poor job in the United States of really advocating for that. Just think about this. When's the last time you saw a commercial that targeted all races, all demographics to actually take care of yourself at home? Very difficult. We don't see that. But back when I was a kid, man, you saw Crest commercials, brush every 6 months, do this, or brush every day and go every 6 months. And it was all this stuff that constantly was inundated on us. We've gone away from that, and I think we have to go back. But that's a passion of mine. My passion is to take this. I do not want to leave my field and say, oh man, look at that. 45% of the nation still goes to the dentist. I need
Right.
Me personally, I'd love 75%. 75%, I think, is a good number, and that should be a number that we're in. How we get that care to everybody, that's it's a $1,000,000,000,000,000 question, really, because it deals with government access. Is definitely something that we're going to have to talk about. But it also deals with insurance companies and insurance companies that create record $1 trillion profits yearly, and we only have 44% of the nation coming through. So at some point in time, I think we all have to sit down and work together, the industry of dentistry, the insurance companies, and the government, to figure out how we're going to benefit, how we're going to do this long term. Because there is no reason somebody should go without teeth in today's day and age.
Would you suggest for people who maybe haven't been to the dentist in a long time, I think it's one of the scariest things if you haven't been to the dentist for a few years to go. It has to be scarier than a lot of other things, because I think most people assume that there's going to be a lot of problems. And so if someone hasn't been to the dentist in a long time, would you suggest that they just call someone up and say, like, hey, I need a checkup, can I come in?
Yeah.
Or how would you suggest someone go about doing that if they're kind of scared to go?
Well, first and foremost, getting a good recommendation from your friends and family, right? And somebody that is going to be compassionate. It's part of customer service, being empathetic and having a physician or a dentist that has good bedside manner and can take care of something like that, right? So that's one. Number two is that it's a great dentist breaks it out to you on what's important right now, what's important in the coming future, and what's important in the distant future. So somebody that can really break it down for you, and it is a relationship based business. So you do have to you got to go to somebody that you're going to have a good relationship with, that you like, that you understand, and those things. I think that's just really crucial when you're picking a dentist and picking somebody, especially when you haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
It should not be scary.
Yeah.
It should not be scary. It actually should be very comforting. But I feel the same way. I mean, it was a couple of years ago that I'm 45, and I was like, I probably got to go see my physician a little bit more often than like once every 10 years. And I was nervous. You're nervous to get the blood drawn and see what's going on. And it's the same thing here. Like, you get nervous. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I brushed well. I don't know what's going on. But it should be comforting.
Right. Yeah, and I like what you said about breaking it down and just helping people understand we don't have to do everything today, but this is what you need to be concerned with now, and this is what we're going to look out for in the future, which I think is a lot of what people do with their health, with their primary care physicians or their internists, where they're like, okay, here's what we want you to focus on now. Here's how we're going to make sure you're well in the future. And I think a lot of people think of dentistry as like, here's what you got to do now all the time. But you can actually lay out a plan of action for people that will help take care of their teeth and their oral health for a long time, and not just worry about, okay, like you said, you got to get this tooth pulled, you have that cavity, whatever the case may be.
Yep, exactly. It's a just bringing people through that, getting them to understand that mix.
Okay. So kind of knowing all of that, then, for you as an associate, did you feel like you were able to do those things, or did you feel like you were able to affect the way that your organization did dentistry at that age, or were you just like kind of doing whatever the older dentists kind of wanted you to do and doing it their way?
Yeah, definitely. I learned really quick that you can't do it the way the old dentist did, right? The old dentist used to walk in and be like, hey, sit back, relax, hold on a second, let me put my cigarette down and let me work on you, right? And you just were like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And you did whatever the dentist really said. That was back when insurance covered 100% of whatever they told you were going to do. So it didn't really, you weren't yes or no. Now with insurance companies reducing the amount that they cover, patients are more apt to ask a lot of questions and, hey, why do I need this? Do I really need this? Oh my gosh, this is, like all those questions come through, and that's okay. That should be part of the process, of doing that. But I always felt that we needed to go into a different direction. I knew right away that customer service was going to be the key factor. I actually worked for Disney when I was in high school. So when you work in Disney, you understand really fast how good customer service is and what the best customer service should be. So we actually brought a lot of principles that we learned at Disney to the dental office.
I have to admit, I never thought about customer service in terms of dentistry. Like I never would have put those two together. And it is a service industry, but it's also one of those, like, I always felt like, well, if you do it, if you need it, you need it. And they're like, what are you going to do? You're going to go see whoever you can. But the way that you're sort of laying this out for us in this customer service individual focused sort of way, it's like it really seems like a partnership with your dentist, where it's not just them telling you what you need, but it's the two of you sort of working together to make sure everything. Because the other thing is the person, the client, the patient has to be able to do the things that you tell them they need to do. So they need to be able to get a new toothbrush every 6 months. They need to be able to get toothpaste and floss and all those things. Like, they have to be able to actually do what you're asking them to do.
So here's the bridge, and not to say that because of the podcast, but honestly, here is the bridge. So people have to be first in healthcare, and there's two people. There's your team members, people you're working with, and two is the patient. Both people you have to listen to. And you do not create a dental office based on what you want. You base it on what your customer wants. And your customer is your team members, and your customer is the patients, right? So you got to listen to them. The second thing is you got to form systems within your office and know the patient experience flow, right? So what is the patient experience journey in your office? And how many touch points do they have, and how do you better that experience in that journey? Okay. And then that equals a business, a good business, right? If you go and just say, I want a good business, I want to make money, and I want to be a healthy business, and you work from there backwards, never works. You got to start with people first, put the systems in place, move into then what does a great business, then you're going to have a great business, right? And that's it. That's kind of, that's a mold that we've always done. One of our pillars is altruism. So I value others more than myself. I need others more than myself. I'm a dentist. The last time, back in the old days, maybe a dentist can answer the phone, book appointments, and see patients at the same time. But ultimately in dentistry, you can't do that. You need other people to help you. And I need my team members around me, and I need patients to come in and want to see me. So those are all aspects that we look at in creating a great business and a bridge between what the patient wants and what we need.
So then let's talk about forming that organization and starting that business, because obviously you have a lot of passion for the job, but you also have a lot of passion for people. And so in order to merge those two, it seems like you really had to go out on your own and do that. And so share with me about kind of what spurred you to start this, and then sort of what it was like for you in those early days.
So I knew that group practice was going to be a thing. As margins begin to decrease and expenses go up and all those things, grouping together and bringing our colleagues together was going to be a big deal. So when I opened up my own dental practice, I merged a bunch of dental practices in my practice. I'll spare you all the details, but my brother and I decided that we were going to own some other practices and bring our colleagues into the mix and take all the great aspects of group practice and the great aspects of private practice, blend them together. We know, being clinicians ourselves, we know what we wanted and what we needed, and we knew what our patients needed. So form a company based on all the things, listening to our customer, form a company based on all those things. The company is based off of relationships. There's relationships that we have with our team members, relationships that the team members have with patients, and that's how we support each other in that mix. My dad was a CPA, so we brought my dad into place, and it was my brother, myself, and my dad. and we started the group and we grew it. We're in 33 locations in the Chicagoland area, and although in dental companies that's definitely a small dental company. We're extremely pleased with the growth. We did a strategic partnership with a great partner in Smile Brands 2 years ago to help us and help our side of growth. And it's just been that's how we knew that we were going to do that. And it gets to a point in your career when, I still do dentistry twice a week, right? And even though you get to a point in your career where you have a passion for dentistry. I love it. But I also have a passion for the field and the business of dentistry, right? I want to make sure dentistry continues to survive the way that it is right now and doesn't get overtaken like we've seen our colleagues in medicine. So understanding that if you do not solve the problems of your industry, somebody else will. And I don't want somebody else to solve a problem for what we think as dentists we can be better at. So that's our goal, and that will continue to be our goal.
It's kind of the entrepreneur philosophy for dentistry, where it's like in an entrepreneurship, you're filling a need, right? You find a void and you fill the need. For dentistry, it seems like that need is to care for the future of the occupation and make sure that it can sustain whatever else goes on in the outside world, and that it can continue to be good for people, for the individuals, to make sure that they are well taken care of. And so I think that's really important. I think that's really awesome that you're really focused in on that and that you enjoy the business, because it can be tough to, I know attorneys who love being attorneys, who love working with clients, but the practice and the sort of, the court systems and all those things get tough to deal with, and sometimes partnerships can be tough to deal with. And so I like that you enjoy both of those, and I appreciate that they're both really important to you.
The mission we have is change the way dentistry is done to improve lives, right? I mean, as I said before, I'm walking away from this field, improving the field. It's pretty tough to do that when you have one dental practice, right? So if you're really planning on changing something and you're planning on moving, you have to go in many different directions to do that. And we made a conscious effort to do that in order to continue to help people.
Yeah. What did it mean to you to get to do this alongside your brother and to do this thing together? What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, when we're not fighting on the floor, no, I'm just joking. I'll tell you what, it means a lot. A lot of people say, like, don't get into business with your family and stuff like that. I mean, I have a lot of relatives that are in our business, to be honest with you. And it's been great. You do have to separate when you get to business, it's business. And when it's, family, it's family, right? And that's always hard to separate. But it's been a blast for me. I can't say that it's been bad. Now you can ask him. You can have him on the podcast. He might say something different. But I think we're both also. We went to healthcare. My mom and dad, as I told you, weren't in healthcare, and to be able to work with our dad is really special. My dad is. Retired, and then we took him out of retirement, and he's in his early 70s, and he's still working with us, and I'll tell you, that's been a lot of fun. That's an enjoyable moment.
Yeah. So regardless of how this grows, and we believe it will grow because it's a system that seems to be working well. So regardless of how big it grows, it's still a family business at its core.
Yeah, man, that's funny that you just asked me that. Somebody just asked me that before. So, yes, I have a different perspective of a family business now. Like a family business, some people think, in families, they love you no matter what, right? You can really, really screw up and you still have family. That's what family means, right? And in our business, that's the case. Don't be afraid to fail. You're going to be okay. You're here. We pride ourselves on that. But in families, different than businesses, I rather look at it as a team atmosphere. Like we're a team, so we don't want to screw up because we mess something up for somebody else, because we're all affected by that. So It is a family business because there's a lot of family members in there, but we're a team, right? And sometimes people think when family business and you start to say like, I remember this, we had to get an HR book, right? Like we're over 500 team members. We're like, okay, we got to get an HR book, and
Yeah,
there's
right.
a lot of people that are like, oh man, you guys are losing your family appeal because you got an HR book. I was like, no, it's because I don't want to get sued and I want you all to have a job, So
Right.
it's you just you got to grow, and you got to grow with the business, and it's not about that. It's about the culture, I still every month I still sign birthday cards for everybody in the company. We still have company outings before COVID, but I mean we plan on continuing to do that. I mean those are the things that make culture special.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think those are the things that make people want to partner with you and to work for you when they feel like they will be valued as an individual, that they won't be lost in this huge practice where it's like, okay, they can still know that you value them, that just thinking of them on their birthday, or that what they add to the practice, I think is really important. And so at the size that you are, how do you continue to value people, and how do you show them that if they weren't there, the practice wouldn't be what it is, regardless of whatever job they do there?
We doubled down on that during the pandemic, to be honest with you, and I think we've learned a lot about how much that culture actually means to us during the pandemic. Every morning during the pandemic, for a half hour, we would get speakers and give positive meetings every morning to our team members because dentistry was stopped. People were
Yeah.
furloughed and it was tough. But we kept on giving positive meetings and we had over 200 people every morning jumping in and listening, and it was just awesome. That was one. Number two, when we came back, we doubled down on it because you're coming back in a stressful situation. You got new PPE. It's just stressful. And on
Yeah.
top of that, 25% of our field didn't come back, because you have
Yeah.
still kids at home and you have all this. And we're 93.6% women in our group. We're 94% women. Dentistry, by the way, I will tell you this. You cannot survive without women. I can talk about that in a second. I mean, it's just a major aspect. But 25% can't come back, or they come back a little bit, or hey, I could do 3 hours a day, but I got to go. It was stressful. And then on top of that, we had all the social unrest this summer. And one day we just stopped with our partners at Smile Brands and us, and Steve and myself, the CEO, said, we got to do something that we can't control what's going on the outside. We can't control the pandemic. We can't control the social unrest, but we can provide an environment that everybody wants to come to in our places of work. So we established, like, once you enter the office, you enter the tent. Everybody's allowed in the tent. The people that aren't allowed in the tent are those that don't want others in the tent. Then you go, right? But everybody's allowed in the tent. We're going to treat each other with respect. We're going to, just kind of be that altruism, and understand everybody and do whatever you can, because the world is so crazy right now. Why the heck are we going to have a crazy workplace also? So we double
Yeah.
down on it.
Yeah, and I like that you said that, because I think when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and we talk about social justice issues, I think a lot of people feel like it's really hard, kind of like what you were talking about as far as going to the dentist. People feel like it's going to be really bad, but people feel like it's going to be really hard to tackle these issues, and some of them it is, certainly. But I think it's also really simple in the way of, like, you have to start somewhere. You just have to start with saying, okay, it doesn't matter what you look like, who you worship, how you worship, who you decide to be in a relationship with. What matters is that you're a person and that you have value, so you belong here. And I mean, I really respect that you took the time to focus in on that and to call that out and to say, like, if you feel like you don't belong anywhere else, you belong in this tent. I think that really inspires me. It really gives me a great feeling, because I feel like you wouldn't necessarily think about your dentist, knowing that importance or feeling or putting that importance on such a high level. But I really appreciate that you do that. And I think that a lot of people wish more people would just take that stance, at least, so that they know, okay, this is a safe space if nowhere else is.
Yeah, it's a tough. A lot of people have said to me, "That must be tough." That's not tough. That's actually pretty easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of tough questions going on the outside in the social world, and man, I am not here to advocate saying that I know any of those answers. Okay, but I do know that you respect other humans. That's it. Like, it's pretty simple, right? You got to start there. And sometimes that's hard when somebody does something wrong against you or perceived to be wrong against you or whatever it is. It's not easy, right? But at Decision One and at Smile Brands, our partner, there's no place for anything but you're okay with everybody, right? This place is the safest place that you could be, and that's it. That's the answer.
Yeah. Wow, to think about work being the safest place you can be, that'd be really cool. If everyone could feel that same way. I mean, I feel that here. I feel like I'm valued here, and that they really pour into me and develop me as a leader. And so I just wish everyone could feel that same way. And I'm glad that you do that there at Decision One. I do want to get back to talking about females in the practice. I guess we can talk about that now, and then I'll go from there. Because we just celebrated Female or Women's History Month here on the podcast, and we had some just amazing female leaders. And so if you haven't had a chance to listen to those, I would suggest everyone go back and listen to our last 6 weeks worth of podcasts, because they were just amazing people. And it's so crazy to think, like, it's crazy good to think that 94% of your organization is female. And so, I mean, how did that happen, and why are females so important to the dental industry?
That's the history of dentistry has always been. I got a good story for you before I get into that. Okay, so I'm on a panel, and this is during that heat of the Me Too movement. Okay, and unfortunately, there's 4 CEOs up there, and we're all male. Okay, in hindsight, probably shouldn't have had a panel like that, but we did. Okay, and there a woman in the crowd. She was very upset, and she said, "Hey, listen." She said it to me. She goes, "I just looked at your leadership in your company, and you're mostly male, and you need more females in this and that." And I just said to her, I said, "Listen, my name's Acierno. My brother's name's Acierno. My dad's name's Acierno. I promise you, if we had a sister named Acierno, she would be up there too." I said, "But I don't. The only thing I can tell you is that in our Decision One, if we did not have women, there's no Me Too movement there's no hey, we need to get more women in dentistry. The answer is, if we don't have women, there's no dentistry. There's none. There's zero dentistry. I can absolutely, positively say that wholeheartedly. Dental schools now, I mean, the classes are 55%, 50% women, right? We have, a predominant of hygiene. It's probably 95% women. Dental assistants are 95% women. The front business associates, they're 95% women. I mean, you cannot function if women were not part of dentistry, right? How that happened, I have no idea, to be honest with you. I think it was a great job back in the day when it was a kind of like a 7 to 3, 7 to 4 job, and it still is a great job, but it's different hours, of course, now, and different things. And there's so many great career opportunities now. it's immense, what's happening in the dental field and the opportunities for women moving forward. I have 2 daughters. There's no doubt that I'll help. I would want them directed towards a field that has, great opportunities for them to move forward. And when you're leading 94, 95% women, why wouldn't you have other women leaders leading it? It's just awesome. So I never even looked at it like that, to be honest with you, until the Me Too movement came. I was just always kind of like, yeah, man, I'm in a field there's 95% women, it was just kind of like, that's the way it is. Then when that came about, I was kind of like, wow, that's crazy. You mean there's other fields out there where there's no women that are, that are in there? I was kind of like an idiot, I was just like, oh, whatever. So for us, we were, I don't know, maybe there was a Me Too movement back in the 60s or 70s for dentistry. I have no idea. All I know is we're a whole century removed from that and ahead of that, and so I really appreciated that about our field. I really do. Healthcare, that's the greatest thing about healthcare. You don't look at race, you don't look at gender, you just look at the person as you're taking care of other people. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. I wish, honestly, we are always looking at diversity at Decision One. We want to do more diversity. We want to be a dentist for everybody. It's the same thing in my practice. Remember, I told you I didn't want like either or. It's the same thing. We only have 44% of this nation going to the dentist. You're not going to get more people going to the dentist if you're just one certain gender, race, or whatever. You need diversity because that's going to include more people coming in and coming to the dentist and feeling safe coming to the dentist. All those things it'd be great.
Yeah. And do you feel like in other practices or in other dental circles that women are elevated to like partnership levels? Do you feel like there are leadership opportunities for other women that are being put out there?
Yes. So a dentist goes, I'll speak business and then it gets into this. So if you ever ask somebody to run their business and say, here's the deal, in the morning, you're going to come in, you're going to rah everybody up. Then you're going to leave the business and come back at 4:00 and go, how did everything go? Would you be a good leader in that practice? They'd be like, no way, man, I'd be dead. That's what we ask dentists to do every time. They're the leader of a business. They go and put their head in a room and work on people. Then they come out and they go, hey, everybody, how did it go? Did people pay today? Did we, what happened? If you look at that, the right hand of a dentist constantly in business is usually a woman. There's an office manager that is a woman. And I couldn't do anything without my office manager, who is a woman that, has been with me since day one that I started this organization, her name's Pasta. She was my first office manager. And honestly, she runs it. People know, I'll ask Pasta. There is a lot of opportunity. There's a ton of opportunity.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question that may sound funny, but I'm always interested in this aspect as well. Decision One has become so successful, and just reading all about the organization and all about you, you're obviously at the top of the practice, and you're doing things that other people aren't doing, and you're doing them really well. Were you worried at all when you started this that this model could fail, or that this wouldn't take off, that people wouldn't buy into what you wanted to do as a leader in the dental practice? Was there any concern that it just may not work?
I had zero concern on the model. I have zero concern on the model. I think patient-centered, focused healthcare is just, you can't go wrong. I do have concerns with the outside influences that do deal with dentistry, from insurance companies to government influence, to supply networks to all those avenues. That's a concern for me. The amount of workers that we can get in. I mean, we can't hire fast enough as our growth continues. It's just very difficult to hire right now. So I'm worried about those aspects, right?
Yeah.
I'm worried about how I get more people into dental care. Those are the things I'm worried about, not the model. The model's solid.
Yeah. And as a leader, I want to ask you this question from the leadership perspective, maybe stepping away even from the dentistry stuff. But as a leader, how do you deal with challenges that, I mean, most challenges you can't see coming, you don't see coming. So when a challenge comes along and you have to deal with it right away, you have to make those leadership type decisions, pretty quickly. How do you do that? Do you have a system of doing that, or do you just kind of take it as it comes? Or is there something that you can share with us about how to deal with challenges just, in your everyday life and in your
So,
everyday work?
so as I'll tell you what I've learned, and then I'll tell you what I have to keep learning. Okay. So here's what I've learned. You develop core principles in your life, right? And you make decisions based on those core principles, and you don't go off of those core principles, or else your culture fails. Okay, so how do I deal with that every day? Every day when stuff comes to me, and it just comes fast, right? You don't go off of that core principle that you started the company and that you continue to grow with. That's number one. Now, what do I have to learn to do more? Um, I'm a fixer. I'm a dentist. I walk in and I fix things, right? But as a leader, sometimes you can't fix things all the time, So I would say, as an entrepreneur and as a dentist, this is the best way I can explain it in a sports analogy. There are entrepreneurs, and most entrepreneurs are the people that want to take the last shot at the end of the game. They want the ball. And you learn as your career goes that helps you establish your business and grow your business. But the learning experience that you have to have is, at one point in time, you need to become a force multiplier, and you can't do that by taking the shot every single time. So you have to learn to train and teach others to take the last shot, and some entrepreneurs have a tough time doing that, and they just can't. And some entrepreneurs have, it works out really well for them. For me, I'm learning that, and I'm working on that every single day, because in my immediate reaction when trouble comes is to fix it. Oh man, I got that answer. I'll tell you right away. But the answer is that you shouldn't do that. You should start asking more questions and trying to get them to the point of feeling secure to make those decisions moving forward. I hope I answered that.
Okay.
I hope I answered that and it wasn't confusing, but
No, that
in
was
my head,
great.
in my head, it seems like it's
No, I think it was great. And yeah, that's a really, I like that idea of asking more questions rather than giving more answers. And I think that's really going to be something that we can take and think about and really unpack that more in our own lives. And that's what I plan on doing, because I'm really intrigued by that.
So
thanks for sharing that.
we have 33 locations. My wish list would be is we never ever had to go into any of those 33 locations and help. Honestly. Now of course that's never going to happen, but the idea is that you're creating such great leaders that they can lead their organization themselves. And all you're doing is supporting.
Yeah. And I mean, that the trust that it takes to do that is huge. It takes a huge amount of trust. But then what I've seen with people in my life is, once you put that trust in them, I think that's really one of the early pieces for people to be able to be successful, because they have to know that you trust them, or else they're constantly going to be worried about, are you okay with the job that they're doing? And for me, when I knew that my organization trusted me, that's when I really felt like I started flourishing, because then I didn't have to worry about, was I doing a good job? All I had to worry about is doing my job and doing it in the way that I in the way that I could stand by it and say, I made that decision because of this. And, I believe that this is the way that they would have done the same thing. And so once there's that dual level of trust where the organization trusts you and you trust them, I mean, that's, I think, when you really start to see people flourish. And I see that's what you're doing in your practices. Like, you have to put trust in every single person from top to bottom that works there, so that everyone can do their thing and flourish. And ultimately, that obviously helps the organization flourish as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So before we wrap this up, I want you to share about your social responsibility and sort of what you feel like your social responsibility is, and then how you walk that out every day, both as the organization and maybe even your family or yourself individually.
Social responsibility, as in what aspect?
Just resourcing people. We were talking a little bit about that earlier, but resourcing people to be able to have the resources they need to take care of themselves, their dental health, their oral health, but also even like you were talking about, maybe even social justice things. I know you talked about sharing that with them, but like, what is the responsibility that you feel you have in the world?
I think any leader or any business owner has that responsibility. Once you lead, whether you're leading 2 people or whether you're leading 500 people, whether you're leading 500,000 people, the answer is that you are, that is your responsibility. Okay. And by the way, I don't look at it as a cause, or I don't look at it as oh my gosh, this is what we're going to preach to the rest of it's the preaching is that the culture is that you're a good person, right? And that you treat everybody the same, and whether they're different or not, they are included in our company. And that, because we have, I mean, literally in any company, we have wives of police officers. We have cousins and individuals that have been hurt by police officers. Okay. We have biracial people. We have bisexual people. We have. I mean, when you grow an organization, you have everybody, right? Doesn't matter. Everybody is the same human being, right? And that's what we stand by. It's not hard. I mean, some people are like, "Oh man, that must be hard." If it's hard, then we got a problem. Okay, it's not hard.
Yeah.
What's hard is that you got to treat them all the same, right? And sometimes some people that maybe feel like they've been treated poorly outside of our tent, okay, and they probably are treated poorly, not probably, they are treated poorly, okay? That sometimes the hard part for me is when they're not doing their job. I don't want them to see me as treating them poorly because of whatever they are. You're not doing your job. That's a hard part. That's hard. For me, that's hard, right? Because I understand what they're going through, but I also understand that you have to do your job too. We're going to help them through that, and we're going to try to work with them before we ever have to say, maybe this isn't the place for you. But that's sometimes my struggle, because but we don't sing from the hilltops. We don't take a megaphone and go, "Oh my gosh, this is what we're doing," and all this stuff. The answer is, we're going to include you, and I don't care what you are. I care that you're a great person and you treat our customers really well, and we'll treat you really well.
Yeah, it's important. I think that really is. I mean, it sounds so simple, but on the same aspect, like, it really should be that simple.
Right. It should be. It should. I do think. I mean, again, I don't have any answers, man. I am not here to say like, oh my gosh, I'm the answer king. Okay. I'm a, I'm the wrong person to be suggesting anything, but I do think sometimes we make it more complicated than it is. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't, it's kind of like that Me Too movement. Like I was totally confused. I was like, man, oh man, what are you talking about? Like this, our field will collapse. And that's what I feel about anything, like I need workers. I need anybody to come help us out and move this vision forward and move healthcare forward. Anybody, right? I don't care what
Yeah.
you are. These are our rules. You treat people good. You're great customer service. You're an advocate. We're a big advocate. You're an advocate for their health. You're that? I don't, man, blue hair, red hair, whatever you want. We're good.
Yeah. That's great. I hope that more fields can get like that. And I just watched the women's basketball national championship that Stanford won last here on Easter Sunday, and I was reading the story about Tara Vanderveer, their head coach, and it was really interesting because it said in the last 35 years she hasn't hired a single male assistant because there's such a disparity of females in coaching, and so she feels like she needs to give those opportunities to females because other people aren't. And you think about it and you're like, man, I wish that it didn't have to be like that, because I'm sure she would just like to hire all the best people that she can, regardless of gender. And that's essentially what you get to do, because you're getting so many high quality people in there that you just hire the best people. And a lot of them tend to be women, which I think is really, I wish that other fields were the same way.
Yeah. See, I feel bad for her that she has to, that's a thought process, right? For us,
Yeah.
I'm lucky. It's not even a thought process, right? Like
Yeah.
when like a woman and a male come in and they're looking for a job, I mean, it's a person, right?
Yeah.
If it's black, white, yellow, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's for us. Everybody's included, so I'm good with anything.
Yeah.
It's really yeah. I just wish. So that's, you asked me the question of what is my social responsibility. I hope that's not a responsibility. I hope that's just what we should do.
Yeah. Well, and maybe right now the responsibility is just sharing how well it works for you and how well it works for the industry, so that other people can get inspired by it and say, maybe if I just don't worry about all these other things, but just hire the best people and make sure that I'm available to all people, and they know that if they work here that, they'll be respected and developed, then, I'll be all right. And I hope that's what people get from that. And maybe that's where you're at in your, because for us, I think at Bridging Chicago, we just want to share these kinds of things. We want to put leaders in front of people and say, here's what they're doing that works really well, and you can do it too. And that's what you're sharing with us, is that here's what I did. Everyone can do it, but you just got to make this a practice. And I think it's really great.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing. I mean, listen, Chicago needs as much leadership as possible to jump in. I mean, we're
Yeah.
unfortunately probably a lack of leadership everywhere around. And we have great leaders in the city like yourself that are doing great things. We just need to sing from the hilltops this stuff. So I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Dr. AJ, I just want to make sure if there's anything else that you want to share with our listeners before we go. I want to make sure that you get it out there. So we'll wrap up here. But if there's anything else you want to share, we're happy to hear it.
No, I'm good. I appreciate you having me on, and appreciate you let us share our story. And if anybody is looking for a job, man, come to Decision One. We'd love to have you, and love to have you part of the D1 family.
Yeah, and if you're scared to go to the
You
dentist,
do not have to be scared.
it's okay.
Yes.
You don't have to be scared. Just give them a call. They'll talk you off the ledge, and they'll get you in and get you cared
There you
for.
go.
So we'll make sure that we link all of your social media and your website to everything so that people can easily find you. We really appreciate your time. We really appreciate your
No, thanks for all you're
candor and we obviously appreciate our listeners. We're so thankful that you join us and that you have grown the podcast as well. And so we look forward to sharing again with you soon. But that's it for this episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solutions Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solutions Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including, but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.